Now, my friend always asks me, do you believe in the Big Bang or do you believe God created man and women? And my answer to him always begins with, I believe that God created men and women. I believe God is the Big Bang. And I'm going to outline this in as simple a way as we possibly can, because when you get into these debates, at times you will be faced with people who are very intelligent and they'll go into the deep. So I'm not going to go too deep, but I'm going to be very simplistic. So for any of you smart guys who are watching this, just understand that I had to simplify this discussion because I have to include everyone along with us. I cannot delve way too deep and leave people behind. So let's start off this discussion with a professor and a student. The professor says to the student, "Where do laws come from?" And this smart young student responds, "Well, laws come from men and women who sit and they do experiments, and then they realize that this leads to this, that leads to that, this happens when you do this, therefore the law must say XYZ." The professor says, "No, I'm not talking about the people who discover the laws. If you sit there and you're doing experiments and then you discover these laws." He says, "No, I'm not saying how were the laws discovered or who discovered the law. I'm asking who created those laws. If you're going to say there's a law of gravity and a bunch of scientists are going to sit there and they're going to experiment and come up with the fact that, okay, if I put this, put up this object, if I let it go, it's going to drop and it's going to fall. Therefore, there is a law of gravity. I understand that they discovered these laws, but who created that?" And the discussion goes on. I'm not going to keep going there. But the conclusion of this discussion is that as much as these smart scientists or the study of science is to discover certain things and to draw certain conclusion, it is not the creator of these things that it discovers. So this therefore means there is a creator. There is someone who formulated these science and mathematical formulas that we are trying to prove when we do science. Who created those laws? You must now assume that if we are discovering them, then someone or something must have created these laws. So let me explain some of these ideas in a simple term. What is evolution? What is the Big Bang? And what is creation? The first thing I'm going to talk about, let's talk about evolution. So in simple ways, the idea of evolution is that there exists this cell that is somewhere in the ocean. And a cell is very simple. It's just a circle. It's deep in the ocean. Over 100 years, over 200 years, or 500 years, it begins to morph itself into different formations. Now, let me also point out that this universe is about, it's billions of years old. So there is enough time for this cell that is sitting at the bottom of the ocean, and it's simple. Let's say it's like a worm. It begins to acquire a certain kind of desire. It begins to want to eat food that is around it. Why? Because when it was a basic cell, there were chemicals around it that required of it to go out and kind of acquire food around it. And then once it begins to develop this desire, this worm now starts to have hands, which we will call fins in a fish, and that's the fish that is deep in the ocean. And once it has these fins, after 500 years, it begins to have another wheel, maybe to go outside of this ocean so that it can eat certain kinds of food. Then it becomes, I believe the word is amphibious. Now it can live both in the ocean, but it has to, and then it goes out, eats food, and comes back. And over generations, these cells, these basic animals develop different desires because it wants to go and acquire something outside of itself. It has this will to eat something and to grow. So it goes out there. After 500 years, it has become a fish. After another 500 years, it becomes a snake. It can now live outside and come back. After 500 years, the snake it can go outside the ocean, and then it realizes, I want a little more food. Then it starts to jump. It learns how to jump. The first few snakes fail to jump, so they die. But with genetically in it is built this desire to acquire more. After 500 years, it becomes a frog. And then it begins to jump. It starts to formulate different ways. It develops certain features that will allow it to acquire what it's trying to acquire. So maybe after trying to jump and it's now become a frog, it now lives outside of the sea, outside of the water for longer periods of time. So it has to develop fur so that it's not burnt by the sun. It has to protect itself from the sun, which means it's now going to be somewhat of a squirrel. Okay, now this is over thousands of years. It's not just something that happens overnight. That's what evolution is actually saying. Soon enough, the squirrel becomes this kind of animal, that animal becomes that animal becomes that, and then at some point this animal can now fly. Now, not every one of the group of species of these animals are going to be able to achieve this goal. Some of these animals become extinct and they die, and we never see them again. And you must remember that as I'm telling the story of this evolving animal, it's over billions of years. It's not over 50 years. Some friend will say, if you believe in evolution, then how come you have not evolved yourself? I says, no, this happened over thousands and thousands of years and millions of years. So this cell that is in the ocean is morphing, is changing, is evolving, and that's where the word evolve comes from. It's changing itself in many different ways. Now let me put you an image in your mind. If you go and you take a bath in a bathtub, the debris, or I forgot what it's called, the stuff that comes out of your body, the dirt, I think that's the word, will be kind of simmering at the top. Right when you get off the bath, it will be there. If you go away for a couple of hours, you'll find that it has now gone down. If you put it into a microscope, or even if you're just looking at it with your naked eye, you will begin to see that it has now clamped itself and it has begun to form certain kinds of structures based on its cell and its desires to formulate these patterns that it has formulated. I put it to you that if you leave that there for a month or 2 months or 3 months or for some time, you will come back and there will be bacteria that would have formed there. This bacteria would have been something that would have created a chemical reaction that would have absorbed and taken in what was in its environment and began to change what it was. In the same way that the cell that lives in the ocean would have evolved over 100 or 500 or 1,000, 10,000, 500,000, a million years. So that's your own little evolution happening in your bathtub. I put it to you that if you left that there for 10 years, some kind of animal, some kind of newer cell would have formulated because of the chemistry that exists there and because of the will of this chemistry, of this cell, to grow and to become something else. Now let me give you another example. All of us as human beings, we are a seed. This seed gets planted in a womb, in the mother's womb, and it sits in there for a couple of months depending on what animal we're talking about, human animal or the animal. As it sits there, it is put in that environment as a tiny cell. The same cell that is in your bathtub, which is your dirt, the same cell that is in the bottom of the ocean. And it begins to acquire, it begins to have some kind of a will to grow, to shape itself in a different way, and it comes out being this fully formed, this new animal. So basically, what happens in a mother's womb is a fast-paced evolution. That seed is planted in there as a seed that has nothing, that does not know anything, but it evolves much more quickly. And that evolution, if you parallel it with the evolution of the universe, and you parallel with the evolution of the bath water, you'll begin to understand what evolution is all about. Now let's go to what the Bible says. I'm going to take the idea of God creating Adam and Eve with the clay and molding him and her and all that. Let's just put it aside, because that's a modernized version of the creation of humanity and human beings. Now, you know why? Because if the Bible was going to sit and explain this thing, this evolution and this science, and it would take forever, and you would miss out on the point of what the Bible is. The Bible comes with a very special purpose. It comes with a very specific purpose that is spiritual and is very powerful. So I don't want you, I believe also the creator of the Bible did not want you to get tangled up in the science of it. Let the scientists talk about the science, let the religious book touch on the religion, and let some of us marry the two, bring the two together, make it make sense. So the Bible is not going to go into the depth of that thing. That's just the modernized version of the creation. But behind that, the true creation comes where God says, or rather the Bible says, in the beginning there was the Word. The Word was God, and the Word was with God. So let's open that up a little bit. In the beginning, there was the Word. Now, I will submit to you now that the Word is not an object. The Word is an idea. The Word is a potential. If I say to you, famous example, pink elephant, there is no object that is a pink elephant, but that pink elephant you can already imagine and see in your brain. And that's just the Word. That's just the power of the Word. That's the potential that exists in the Word, the power of the Word, right? So in the beginning, there was the Word. So then someone may ask, so where was God in the beginning, and how did he create, or what form was he? God was the Word. God was the potential. God was the idea. God was the cell. The cell is the Word. The cell is not the human being as we see him today, but it is the potential that existed, the idea that exists. And God said, let us create man in our image. Now let me submit something else to you. If you go and talk to a cockroach and you says, cockroach, what is God in your perspective? In the perspective of a cockroach, God is something that is like a cockroach. Go and ask a tree, what is God? God is a tree. That's what a tree will say. Go and ask a snake, what is God? A snake will say, God is like themselves. You go and ask a banana, what is God? God is an idea that is a banana. It's the seed that is the banana. The seed that is an orange. The seed. In other words, every animal and every creation understands God in his own image. Every seed sees and understands who God is in its own image. We as human beings, we understand God. That's why we draw that big guy with a big white beard sitting somewhere in heaven and we say this is God, because he is our seed and that's our image. If you spoke to a tree, the tree will say God is another tree, is a seed that comes from the tree. Again, with every other animal, they cannot, you talk to ants. Ants have their own queen, and that in a sense is the seed that is within their own image. So when it says, and then God said, let us create man in our own image, there was no concrete form that existed, but that concrete form was a seed that would have existed in every other seed. I hope this is making sense. I hope this is clarifying some ideas. And I won't be able to delve into the depth of it all in just one video. So this might go on for maybe 2 more other videos where I'll explain this. Now let's park those there for now, and let's run to the Big Bang. Now the idea of a Big Bang, again, I'm going to simplify it, is that the potential existed, the word existed, the unconscious thought existed, where this burst of energy happened. In other words, this desire happened such that it would begin to evolve and move and have this desire to be in a consistent state of growth. And that's what the cell does. That's what we do as human beings. That's what a tree does. That's what the ant does. That's what everything does. This word, this desire, this subconscious idea seeks to what? To evolve. It seeks to create itself. It seeks to be continuously moving. And that is the word. In the beginning, that's the word. The word was God. The word was with God. In the beginning was the cell. The cell was God, who is the snake, the tree, the cockroach, the ant, the human being, the whatever it is. That is the word. That is its word. That is its cell. And it desires to live. So when the Big Bang happens, the universe is spun into motion. It is spun into this continuous motion as we see it even today. The sun is always moving, the moon is always moving, the planets are always moving, the galaxies are moving, the Milky Way are moving, the universe is moving. Everything is in this constant motion because of this desire, because of this Big Bang, because of this evolution, because of this seed that is in the stomach, because of this process that is going on in the bathtub. All these things are in motion, and they desire to be in motion. They desire to grow. So when God says, let there be light, boom, everything goes and it begins to move. And the word says, let there be this, it begins to create this process. And that is why, in conclusion, I will say to you, God is the Big Bang. It is this motion that was put into motion at the beginning when God was the Word, and the Word was God. And who was God? God was the image of whatever it is, she is, he is, that he will create. Now, this may be a little confusing to some, but I think I've tried my best to simplify it. Someone will say, so what happens about the Genesis? God created man in his image and And I've already explained that the Bible has a specific purpose that it was supposed to give to us, as quickly as possible. So it would not have time to delve into the science of this debate. And that is why I says, don't worry about the modern painting of this picture of creation in the Bible. Don't debate the Bible's nitty-gritty, because you're going to miss the big picture. The Bible comes, it has a much bigger picture than the idea of creation. If you want to talk about the creation, this thing that I'm talking about, you have to parallel that with science, with metaphysics, with all these. You have to come up with all these things. But the purpose of the Bible is much bigger than those things. That's why it exists. And in a different video, I will be able to talk about that as well and share my views. Now, because of time, I have to cut this video. But if you have questions, if you have comments, if this is helpful to you, if something doesn't make sense, go ahead and make your comment, and also like, and also share. Also, tell me what you think. Is this helpful? Does it make sense to you? So that I can post more videos on these very deep and intense topics. All right, guys, thank you so much for your time. We'll see you again in a different video, and remember to keep on evolving. All right, we'll see you soon. Bye.